But what I'll do is I'll just talk to you all like you have very limited to no exposure, and just do a general overview of Starfish, just so we can make sure we're all on the same page. And then maybe it might be helpful, especially since we meet every morning. Maybe we hit just little topics here and there when we have light agendas, as refreshers versus trying to cram it all in one setting. I am also working on a Word document that will have some tips and tricks of the common questions I'm getting, so that you can refer to that too. Usually tied to office hours and appointments and how to share your calendar. Those are very common. This is being recorded. I'm sure you got some kind of notice when you first logged in, so I'll be able to edit it and send it to who was not able to make it today. And right off the bat, just keep in mind that access visibility is dependent upon your role at the college. So we are importing all of you, except for Annalise and Lisa. They have a different privileges, but for the most part, all of you have the financial aid staff role, which has a lot of visibility, but you don't see this retention score, for example. So if you log in, that chart's not going to be there. So just know it's not because anything's broken. It's because there's different permissions based on your role at the college. And we constantly have conversations about those modifications. Just know with these retention scores, that's an ongoing conversation right now with who should be able to see it versus who should not. So once administration has made a final decision on that, you may or may not see your view change based on that decision. But this is the landing page for staff when you log in. It is different for students. I'll show you what that looks like. You can access it either through Canvas or through Portal Guard. And I believe we've also added it to the login dropdown on the homepage of the college too. So assuming you all know Portal Guard and can get into it from there, we're just going to start from there. So this is the landing page. Again, depending on your view, you may or may not see things like you won't see this, so that will go away. And you can move these around. So you may have your services over on the right-hand side. These are all widgets that you can hide or show. It will show you the services that you're a part of on the left. Because of testing, I tend to be thrown into various things. You will at least have the financial aid one. Annalise probably has a couple more. But students, when they log in, they are dropped straight into the Success Network. So if you're ever with the student and they log in, this is why it looks completely different than yours, because they're immediately shown the services available on campus. And if there's any connections, those are reflected as well. Now, at this time, we are only importing EOPS and soon to be CARE as well, as personal connections to students. This is because in EOPS and CARE, they do counselor assignments, which means for a student, you have a counselor. There's been discussion about having that case management structure in other counseling groups, but that hasn't been triggered yet. So the only relationships currently being imported for the connections view are EOPS. But in the event I am told that we're starting to assign counselors to students in other ways, those will show up here along the top as well. Obviously, that's nice from a student perspective, because then they can immediately see who they can work with and have access to their information. Financial aid is in here. We did review this recently, but this is your tile. And so this is what students can see. Biggest issue I have with these right now is getting departments to let me know when you have changes. So we see Jose is still in here, so he obviously needs to get removed. Those are manual, like we have to go on the admin side and remove or add people to various roles. So as you use this more, if changes are starting to happen and you know that something's going to change, let me know. A lot of times I usually know what's going on. And so as I'm clicking around, I'm like, oh, I need to remove him and I can go and do that. But it would be awesome if we could be a little bit more proactive on making some of those changes. And we are working on an onboarding, offboarding solution in IT so that we can hopefully be better about how we're adding and removing people from software.
Melody, where is it pulling the title from? Because they're all different.
So there's two answers to that. First one is the Active Directory. So the Active Directory, which is when you first are hired and you submit a request for an email address, or the director, you submit a request to Angie in IT, who sets up the Outlook account. She's setting up an Active Directory account. And those titles, yes, we have seen a lot of inconsistencies, especially like when there's reclasses or adjustments that just tend not to happen on the Active Directory. So that is the initial import. Now you can modify these. Once it's imported, you can make adjustments and save it, and any manual overrides will stick. We did make that adjustment recently with Starfish so that if Candy changed her title, it doesn't automatically change back at night. So that's why you're seeing them slightly different, because some of them have gone in and made their modification in Starfish, and some have not. Otherwise, it will attach your roles too. So Lisa, notice with you, your role is financial aid staff and student services leadership. So since you haven't manually adjusted your title, those are the titles coming in. But I can show you guys how to do that piece. But just know this is what students would see right now for financial aid. We can add more to the overview. We can use HTML, which means we can add pictures, links, tables, and so on. So there's quite a bit we can do with this page depending on how many resources we want to provide. I understand we put a lot of effort into our web page on the financial aid side. So if anything, we probably want to encourage utilizing that. The link is on the left here, but we might want to also reference it in the description as well. But this is what it presently looks like. So I'm going to start with your profile adjustments here. So I'm going to work on this menu on the left, and then we're going to work our way down. And that will hit on the question already asked. So on the left, when it comes to making any adjustments on your profile, you have to click on your name first. So that opens up a submenu. This is where you can edit your profile, your appointment preferences, notification preferences. You could log out, or you could just close the browser session. So with editing profile, this is where you can adjust your picture. We again pull the initial picture from what we have on the server, which for most of us is our convocation picture from several years ago, very outdated. So you can upload it. Obviously, I haven't changed mine in a while, but it is not the 2008 picture anymore, at least. So you can click on this and make that adjustment. And then you can also change where your default login page is if you want to. You get some quick links, so for Annalise, if she wanted to include a link to scheduling appointments in her Outlook signature, she could use this URL. We don't have people really utilizing these deep links yet, but they are there. And then here's where you can modify your contact information. So by default, it's going to bring in your IVC information. Obviously, you can add alternate emails. I did just because I used to use this as a faculty member. Alternate phone numbers. And then if you have other means of communication, like I used Zoom, so I gave them the video phone ID as well. And then your title, again, how it comes over most of the time needs a little bit of massaging, so you can modify that here. And then if you wanted to, you can add biography and overview. Again, those are just optional. I had done it because I was having students use this for office hours with me. Once you've made modifications, you can save the changes, and those will immediately take effect. So I encourage you all to check at least what it says and see if any changes are needed and make those changes. And maybe there's even needs to be a conversation, but about as far as consistency, I know that with guided pathways and our career and learning pathways groups, we had them append their title to indicate what CLP they were part of as well. So I'm not sure if we're just going to use our generic titles or if we're wanting to append anything to that.
I think everyone should just put in their titles and just keep it, and don't do all caps. I noticed some of them are all caps so that they all look the same. And then the specialist can do a / work study coordinator. But other than that, you should be a financial aid specialist, a student services technician, whatever your title is, financial aid officer.
Okay, now the appointment preferences tab. This is another big tab that influences a lot of pieces. So you can put in here, and I know not all of you are leveraging appointments at all, and may not even have the plan to do so. But it is important just to understand how it can impact pieces in this particular program, since many of our student services folks do use this feature, and some of our faculty. So you can set your default the day before the office hour ends when you're wanting to allow for scheduling. So I'm saying that they can't schedule an appointment with me the same day. Like I need to at least have it by 5 p.m. the day before to give me time to prepare for it. So those are the modifications that you can make. And then down here, calendar syncing is the most important. We do have instructions here that show how to go through the Outlook integration. It's not as hard as you think. It's basically going into Outlook and clicking to share your calendar. So for those of us that have shared our calendar in Outlook before, that's all we're doing. We're sharing it with Starfish at imperial.edu. By doing that share, we go in on the back end, accept your shared calendar, and that allows Starfish to read your Outlook calendar to ensure that there's never overlapping appointments. If you build office hours, or if a student tries to book with you and you have something on your Outlook calendar, it will say like, oh, not available. So very crucial for our counseling folks, obviously, and for Annalise to have that integration there. It saves you a lot of time because then you're not having to do any duplicate work as far as showing when you're off and when you're there and so on. And so that's this checkbox here, allows Starfish to read my busy times and then following the instructions for that piece. Now, locations. In the event we do use this for appointments for students for any reason, you have to have at least one location added. And so I added Zoom, and then I created one just called by appointment only to make it very clear that it's only by appointment only. Don't just show up in my office. And then by phone, you could just build one that says financial aid office and list the building. But at least one needs to be there if you're ever wanting to play with that functionality. And then last but not least, calendar management. The number one question I get every week from somebody in student services, typically, especially when we change positions. I know student services has had a lot of changes lately with people moving from different areas. So you want to share your calendar. Let's say that Annalise wants to share her calendar with Maria. You all have the ability to do this. Now, I know a lot of people just think, oh, I need to contact IT. And we can go in and do it, but so can you. You have the power. So all you have to do is go in here and click to add a calendar manager. And you find if it's Annalise, she just looks for Maria and clicks to add her. Works the same way the other direction. Let's say someone left, like Jojo, and you were sharing your calendar with him. You would just go in, click on his name and remove it. So this is how you deal with adding people. And so I could, there she is. So here's Maria. I can click to add her as a calendar manager. Now we see her. This just means that she now has the ability to see my availability in Starfish. And I can show you what that looks like. So typically in the counseling areas, they share with each other, just so you know. And everyone wants to see Annalise's calendar too. If I recall correctly, she's sharing her calendar with quite a bit of people. Right, Annalise?
Yes, that's correct. And I'm also reviewing. I have a lot of people in here. I didn't know everybody
You have a
was
lot
here.
of people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Do
everyone
you
should see
recommend
them.
I delete the ones that don't need to be there or just leave them? Does it really matter?
No, you can remove those that you don't feel should still see
Yeah.
your calendar. I know that for some reason, like we had Lenore still in there. He's not using this. He's the president now, the interim president. So if there's people in there that you don't feel should see your calendar or wouldn't even use, there's not a business use case for seeing your calendar, then you can remove them. So you do have that control to add and remove.
Okay.
And you might have some. Now, just know if someone ends up completely leaving and is removed from Active Directory completely, then you try to remove them. It won't let you delete them. For those, just open a ticket, a Starfish ticket, because we actually have to reach out to Starfish because they're no longer syncing. So they have to manually remove them on their end. That's why it's important that we make those changes as soon as we know there's going to be a change. So then that way we don't end up with those accounts that we have to ask for outside help for, but it happens.
Yeah, the ones I have a lot is like the old work study students that we used to have.
Yeah, the work study,
So
that's been a big challenge.
Okay.
Yeah, work study students, changes in work study students don't usually get reported as often as they should. So
Okay.
What I've just told Abelardo, who's been my replacement over as the business analyst, I just told him, you know what, at the end of every semester, just email the list of students that you have that have access to Starfish to the various areas and say, do you still have these folks? And then when they say no, remove them. Like we're noticing in IT, we need to take a little bit more of a proactive approach due to not being informed, because we don't want to have students have access that shouldn't. So, okay, notifications is the last one. Just here by default, you're going to get an email if you're attached to something that has email configuration, but you can go in here and make some modifications on that. The biggest one is whether or not you want it sent an alternative email. Obviously, I don't recommend that. And then if you're wanting potentially a summary. So I have for tracking items, I don't want to be emailed every day. So I just say at 9 a.m. on Mondays, send me a summary. So you can do that to limit how many emails you're getting from Starfish for those that are attached to quite a bit of tracking items. Same with reminders as far as notifications. And I do have an alert. This is default to be notified 15 minutes before appointment's supposed to start. You can modify this to be even sooner or later as well. So those are the preferences that you have access to make some modifications to and play around with. Even though I understand you may not use all the functionality, just know those are there. So hopping back over to the menu, we are going to, I guess we can jump into appointments next. The biggest one that you guys are going to live in is the students tab, but we'll just go in order. So for appointments, notice here on the left-hand side, the colorful names. And you're probably seeing some of your names there too. So these are the folks that have shared their calendar with me. So if you've shared your calendar with someone or you have calendar shared with you, their names will show up here. The beauty of that, if I click on the week view, beauty of that is then I can click on those names and based on the color you see, so we see that Letty is maroon over here, then she shows up as that same color here on my calendar. So I can see if she has, looks like you're integrating your calendar, Letty. So we see the particular meeting going on right now pops up. And so this is a way to see if someone has something on their calendar really quickly. Think of it as it's Outlook sharing, but through a Starfish view, so that you can see if someone's available. And also if they have any office hour blocks built. You can see, of course, my calendar is crazy, but that's typical. So for your calendar, right here is where you can actually create blocks. So if you ever decided, hey, you know what, we're going to use the virtual kiosk, which we can talk about, and we want to be available on Friday for a 4-hour block, you can build that block here. You just click add office hours, and then we can build that out. Again, future discussion, but that's how we would do that if we wanted to start giving availability blocks to students to book with us or utilize the virtual kiosk and see us virtually. As far as appointments, this is how the secretaries or the front office people are adding appointments. So if you did have availability, or even if you didn't, JC can go in here and click to add an appointment and build out that appointment for you in Starfish. So this is a way that we're having the front desk folks leverage the calendar functionality. So people like, Maria and Tiffany and so on, they live in this screen quite a bit. If they click to add an appointment, they get the option to find the student and then put the date and time of that appointment and select the reason and so on. So just so you have a little snapshot on how they're dealing with appointments over in counseling. Reserve time, please just avoid that one because with the Outlook integration, you don't need to put reserve time. This would be if you're not using Outlook integration and you're wanting to block off pieces of your calendar, you could use reserve time and it would block off that day. But we strongly just encourage that if you're out of the office or something's going on, just put it on your Outlook calendar and then the integration handles it itself. So that's all I wanted to hit on this one because again, I know most of you aren't doing appointments, but just so that you know how it works, just a general overview. So the big one is this one, students. This is where you're going to pretty much live in the, when you utilize this particular program. This is where there's a lot of power because of how much we're importing. So again, because of access, you won't see this retention score call. You'll see the column, but it will be blank. And that again, just has to do with an access issue. But when you first click into students, you will have some form of an overview tab depending on if you're tied to any tracking items, which I know you all have at least one that you're tied to. It will give the overall percentage of the flags I see all of them, so I'm seeing how many are available. I'm happy to see that we don't have too many, which we shouldn't because the semester ended, so they should have pretty much been addressed. But on the My Students tab, this is where you can start to do some pretty powerful filtering. I already have a filter in place, so I'm going to close that one out, and then we'll see all the students we're importing. We go 6 years back right now. And so that's why you see such a really high count. That's obviously not all of our active students. This is all the students being imported. And we do a lot of that because of the analytics that are driving those scores. So we have a pretty decent population being imported. But you can filter this down. That's what makes it powerful. Depending on your connection, you might see some different options here. Most of you just have the financial aid staff connection. But if you have more than one, you'll see those here so that you can filter by students that are tied to you through that connection. And then you can also filter using the terms. Again, this menu will look different depending on your access. Most of you just have ongoing access, so you probably don't see these academic year filters. I see them because these happen to be the academic years I taught in. So I have the ability to filter those particular years. Otherwise, most of us just have active, all, or ongoing. Now, the cohorts is where we're able to start filtering by active term. This is something that we manually did on our side via a script coming over. And then you can also filter by special programs. So we could see ASG students, academic prep when we were doing that. I don't know if we're still doing academic prep, but that was an attribute banner. Athletes, CalWORKs, concurrent enrollment students, dual enrollment students, because there is a difference between those two. There was a rationale as to why it's important to separate them out, so you can filter by one, the other, or both. EOPS, foster, IVUP, jail students, and prison students. Again, they're both incarcerated, but there was a rationale to also have them separate. So if you're wanting to see incarcerated in general, it would be both boxes. Next term students, those that have petitioned for that next term priority registration, student ambassadors, and TRIO, and veterans. So a lot of filters, and there's even more under the attribute section. But this is how we've really helped leverage when it comes to following up with students and seeing what programs they're part of to help us see who would best serve them on a counseling perspective. Now, under additional filters, you can filter by quite a bit of things, but just know mostly you're going to probably jump down here to attributes. Now, we do have other cohorts in here too. You will see a lot of the ones we just went over, but we added a couple more, and this was again just because of sensitivity. We wanted to make you have to really drill down. And so we have housing insecurity. I just know this is an ongoing conversation though, because apparently we are storing, as Lisa knows, we are storing our housing insecurity students in multiple places in Banner, depending on where the student goes for help. And so where we're pulling this from is just one location. So if you know of a student that's reported themselves as housing insecure, but you don't see it here, it could be because they don't have that attribute through admissions and records, and they need to have that added. And we need to get on the same page on where best to store that data. But for now, this is using the ANR cohort attribute in order to reflect that attribute for them. And then we also are putting student education plan information in the system as well. So you can filter on multiple at once if you needed to, and it will give you that particular student list, email, and phone number. And just to show you how else they show up. So we see here EOPS student is eligible to participate in EOPS. So whatever that attribute has, since EOPS has language tied to that attribute, we're also returning that language because, as you may or may not know, EOPS has multiple categories. So you may have a student that's EOPS, but termed out, or something about, ended program, no longer eligible, things like that. Whatever that particular value is gets returned there too. We also have education plan data coming over. And so they will say, most of these just have the EOPS, but along the top, we also have where it's like abbreviated ed plan completed, comprehensive ed plan completed, or both completed, which has been helpful on the counseling end because they've been doing a lot of campaigns tied to education plans. Again, you're not seeing this particular score. So I'm not really going to cover the details over that because that's still at the administration level for deciding visibility. But once you have a student page open, I did want to give you a little bit of a description of the student information page. So if you have a student opened up here, there's quite a bit of data that's getting piped in, similar to the SIOS profile. So under the info tab, it will show all sorts of information tied to demographics and so on. So be careful. Obviously, you don't want to have this wide open in front of a student, depending or other students, depending on their level of access. Now, student workers have very limited access in Starfish. They do not see this level of information. They can add appointments, but they can't see all this information on the info tab. But it will tell you major, it will tell you GPA, and a lot of the pieces you're used to seeing on SIOS profile are here as well. And if you're going to ask, will this replace SIOS profile? We've talked about it, but I mean, in the meantime, we're just so used to using SIOS profile. So there's no plan to get rid of that anytime soon, but this is quickly becoming redundant as far as it's showing a lot of the same information. And we could show programs they're part of and so on, all on this particular page. So it becomes very useful. You can also see the courses that they're registered for on the left-hand side. It shows courses. And depending on, again, level of access, I can actually click on these and even see just overall status. This is if faculty use the campus gradebook though, so it's not always there. And then tracking if they have any flags currently opened. So this particular student, none are open. The flags she had are resolved. And again, that's an access issue. You'd only see flags you have permissions to view. So the financial aid flag would be something that you could see. But if there was a flag that was tied strictly to the C program, for example, you would not see it because only the C staff have access to see that too. A lot of power when it comes to the access. So if you have flags you guys want to raise on students, but only you guys see them and not counselors, we can do that. So it's something that staff can work on and close, but no one else can see it given the sensitivity of financial aid data, of course. You can also see past meetings, again, depending on access. And so financial aid, if you had meetings, you could see when they last met, who they met with. And if we open it up, you can actually see the details of that meeting. But again, depending on access, you will not see, obviously, EOPS's information here. But that's helpful as far as you can quickly see, okay, they met with Letty and she told him about this, and this is where I need to continue on, all within the student info page. Then there's a notes section. Notes, the only difference between this and meetings, because obviously you saw in meetings, we can see the notes. But under the notes section, in the event someone just clicked on plus note here and didn't have an appointment, that shows up here. This is notes for every type of Starfish element, whether it's an appointment, a tracking item, a manual note, any type of documentation tied to that student that you have access to see would be here. So this is a more general overview of all documentation. And then network just shows any connections to that particular student. Tutoring has been playing with this quite a bit. They're leveraging it now for virtual kiosks, for tracking items, appointments, and so on. They started that in the fall semester, beginning of the fall semester. So we're going to start to see those connections if they have any to particular tutors. Abel's the one that's playing around with it, which is why you see his name here. But as we continue to leverage that, we are looking at other ways to use it too. If there's a rationale to have a specific person in admissions or financial aid or so on, we have that conversation. But this could be a way to show a student their success network, if you would. Now, over here on the same page, we have one more tab, which is the tracking tab. It has the same filters, but keep in mind, since it's a different tab, it's different filters. Like this one is a different filter than what I had on the My Students tab. It doesn't carry that filter over. So if you filtered on EOPS students, but then came over here, just know that it's not going to say like, oh, she has EOPS filter on students. You will need to go in and do the modification on the filters. So this particular one has a filter. It remembers the last filter that you had. So in the event you're always working on a certain subpopulation, it will just keep that until you close it out. And then this will show you tracking items. So we do see here super exciting. Only 14 flags are open still for the end of the term. That's excellent. And again, you're not going to see most of these flags, you do not have permissions to view. We continue to talk about it at the administrative level as far as holistic support of students who should see what. But for now, we're still pretty sectioned off when it comes to visibility. And so if you see 0, don't be alarmed. It's just because none of them have been opened up to access to financial aid staff, except for I know the financial aid flag for sure. And then I believe also the potential fraud alert. So those would be listed here. And you can actually see if it is a flag that you have permissions to view, you can see who raised it. This was the faculty member, for example, and then who's following up on it. This is an old one. I'm taking it that Lupe has this still open because she's going back and forth with the student. So she left it opened. When they're cleared, they will no longer be visible unless you add a filter to look at cleared flags. The person that raises it does have the option to add a due date. So some add it, but most don't. And there is a way to assign flags in Starfish. And so they've started leveraging that functionality too, so that they can start dividing and conquering over primarily in C is where most of these flags are worked. So flags, just so you know, those are tracking items. Those are that's the early alert piece of Starfish. So when students need help or are starting to fall back in their class, faculty can raise flags to follow up on. Tutoring can raise referrals. Faculty can raise kudos. We are seeing an uptick in that use. We usually get about 2,000 a semester, which is not bad. And that's because we are at least once a semester, we are sending faculty a progress survey, which is a quick list for them to just check some boxes on if they want flags or kudos. And so we are starting to see faculty use the progress survey piece. Now, quite a bit of them are still not logging in and doing them manually, but at least they're leveraging the progress survey piece so that we're still getting some good data to follow up with students on. And we already looked at the Success Network. Upcoming is just if you have any upcoming appointments. Waiting room we'll hit on a little bit later. Inventory is the intervention inventory. This is still being configured currently. So I don't even think there's anything in here yet. We'll see. Although there are some. Abelardo, our business analyst, is the one working on this project. So there will be some pre-baked interventions built in here that when students need them, a counselor or whoever's most appropriate can assign that intervention. And it's a set of actions to take. It's a great tool. What's nice is we can actually just download them from other community colleges that already have it. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And it will be interesting. I'm sure there'll be some financial aid potential interventions that can be leveraged as well, but this is still an ongoing project. And then just know down here, the request help is for students. They can actually raise their own flags. We do not have that many built for them yet, but they can raise a flag on academic tutoring, academics in general, financial aid, or housing. And this is just, it raises a flag. It raises a flag and notifies the departments in question that the student is requesting help. So we, of course, will probably expand what they can ask for help on, but for now, it's just been very, those 4 buckets. They type in a course if it's tied to a course, and then the details, and then just submit, and it triggers a flag. And you are set to get emailed in the event that happens. And plans is not in place. There's conversation about moving to the new degree planner. In the event that does get approved, then if students have degree plans, they would be here, and they would also show up under their student profile. You'd see a new link on the left that says plans, and they'd be able to see their degree plan all within Starfish, and then counselors could modify the plan and so on. It's basically a replacement of DegreeWorks within Starfish in the event we went that direction. So that's just going through the menu. With those tracking items, just know I also would be asking for some language. So for adding any, I can show you for the financial aid. Referral, I don't think you have any customization on that one, but let's go to referrals, add referral. Yeah, so right now we just have we have 2 Templates, we have ones for EOPS referral. That's because, again, Sergio, he's gung-ho. He wants customization as much as he can have it. So just know we could also customize a particular language for the financial aid referral versus just the blanket referral template. So again, depending on the referral that's brought up, it looks like Study Skills Center and EOPS have customized messaging, same with Link. Otherwise, all other referrals look like this. It looks pretty because it's HTML enabled, so we can add a nice little header and we have a nice little footer as well. And then the generic one just says a blank referral has been created by for. So this is all smart text. So it would be a financial aid referral has been raised by Candy for name of student or so on. And then it will show student ID number, name, course, if a course was selected, when it was raised, and any notes provided on that referral. So this is what the generic template looks like. Still nice. But again, you do have that option to do some customization. But let's look at Study Skills Center. Yeah, so see, the Study Skills Center added their Zoom room to their template. This is something Abel worked on. So in addition to the referral to tutoring, they're also being encouraged to visit the library and learning support virtual Zoom. And then there's a linked image here that takes them straight to it. So pretty cool.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Yeah, so we could do it for financial aid referrals. We could have a customized template that goes out versus just the generic, if that's something we wanted to do. And these are for referrals, tracking items, kudos, and so on. We have over 100 templates at this point. And those are, at this point, those are things that Abel works on because he is also familiar with HTML. So I just pass on the language to him and then he does the actual building of it. So, cool
And
stuff.
so when someone from another department is referring someone to financial aid, all financial aid departments going to see it?
Correct. The way that you currently have it configured, and we can actually just look under the hood right now because you just have the one. So we have tracking rules and yours is a referral. And then we just look down here until we find it.
Well, not necessarily a referral, because the referral, if we were to refer them through Starfish, then we wouldn't have to send the email out because we're already referring them here, right?
Right, but right now we're talking about financial aid referrals, right? People that refer them to us.
Right. So they wouldn't raise these, but as far as visibility, as far as what do I see or how am I going to see if someone else in any other department refers them to financial aid? This is how it's currently set up. So for raising options, it allows a due date. It's not mandatory, but it allows them to put that in if they want to. And then as far as who can see it, it looks like several departments can have access to create them and view them. Probably want to look at the modification for the manage piece. This is who has access to close them. So it does look like C has access to close them as well. I mean, is that something that you think should stay that way? And for a time before we had all of you imported, we were just doing one name at a time. So we have JC in here. We have Jojo is still in here. I can obviously just click and remove that right now. But we see it's also can be by role. It doesn't have to be by name. So financial aid petition counselor, Annalise has that role. So she would have access to see it. EOPS has access to see it. All these areas have access to see it. But as far as managing it, JC, Annalise, the person that raised it has the option to do just kidding, which of course makes sense in the event it was an accident. And then financial aid staff. This is where most of you come in. Most of you have this role here, financial aid staff. So you can create them, view them, manage them, and assign them. But again, we can make modifications to this if we need to, Lisa. So this is how we configure who sees what and if there's an email that goes out and to who. So right now you guys are set to receive an email in the event this particular referral is raised. But let's say
That's where I would want them to come into the front desk, and then from the front desk assign them.
Yeah, so you may just have this, instead of everyone getting an email, just have the front desk get the email and do the assigning piece, and then they just have the access to view and manage them, but not get emails and so on. Right? Okay. So that's how we manage each particular item. And as you can see, it's each item. So if we create a new referral, maybe we want to create a referral tied to a particular campaign, maybe this financial wellness thing or so on, then we could, of course, customize that visibility, managing, and so on, each by item. But you all would pretty much live here in the students menu. If we're talking strictly early alerts and tracking, you just hop over to students, click on tracking, and this is your tab. This is where you'll see your list. You can download it into Excel if you wanted to. You could message the students in bulk. Of course, I don't really recommend that unless you know exactly how many, if you're wanting to say the same exact thing to all 9, that works. But, or you can just do one at a time, click to message them here. Or you can open up the particular tracking item and add a note to that too, which of course is helpful. So for Nicole, in her tracking item here for counseling, I can go in here, I can add a note, and I can actually resolve. I don't have access to resolve this one. Oh, I do. If I hover over it, I can click to clear it, and it will clear that particular flag. So you would live in this particular tab here.
That's nice, because sometimes we do send the same message to several students.
Right. It's nice. I encourage you, especially when you first start using this, make sure you hop over to notes so that you can see what work's already been done. Because in that way you can see oh, someone followed up with them already, or looks like Candy, you tried to make a phone call, but no one answered. Then that person can just literally take the baton from there with that understanding of what the student's already gone through. Yeah. And again, each one of these can, open up. So this is Isamar actually working on a flag, an academic performance flag for a particular student from a faculty member. So then she added here what her follow-up was. And it's the close the loop comment. So that went to the faculty member too, just so that they can see the follow-up that occurred. We're trying to work on that holistic support to students and all get on the same page. There is an option, which we're working on admissions and records with, to import notes from Banner. So Spacement is what A&R uses in Banner to document notes. And there is a way to import those notes into Starfish so that they show up here in this notes view, so that counselors don't have to also log into Banner, because as we know, most counselors don't use Banner other than SAVAM STD. And so we're looking at automating SAVAM STD and then also importing notes so that they can see if a petition was approved or denied and so on from Banner. So that's also an ongoing piece. So a lot of integration between Banner is available with this product, which makes it so useful across multiple departments. Do you have any specific questions, or is there anything you'd like me to dive in a little bit more detail?
Not yet.
I was like, this is where you all get quiet.
Yeah.
The biggest piece will be to start using it. What we'll want to do is start doing some tests. Okay, cool. No other questions. So unless there's any other questions, we can call this a day. And then once we have some financial aid tracking items there, you'll be able to start playing with assigning. JC, I think we'll end up having our own session when it comes to the assigning functionality. And then I think once we have some assigned, we probably will circle back on one of our morning meetings on, hey, just a heads up, remember, this is how you can see them. This is how you can work them and close them, so that you can have that refresher as we start to get them. Right now, there's none here. And I know hands-on is helpful. I have no problem if you want to play with my record. If you want to go in and do a referral on my G number and for financial aid and see what that looks like, go for it. And I know a couple of us are taking classes. So that could be a way to test it out if you're wanting to. I can always delete them later. If I suddenly get all these flags, I'll know why. You're welcome. Well, you guys all have a great day then, and I will catch you later.